Okay, so to factor out the coefficient of a variable term, we need to define a few things first. A coefficient is going to be any number that's multiplied by a variable. So a few examples of a coefficient, if we're looking at like 47n, the coefficient is going to be the number before the variable. So 47 would be the coefficient in this case. We could also look at something like 12y. In this case, our 12 is going to be the coefficient because it's the number that's multiplied by the variable. And then finally, sometimes our coefficients might be fractions. If this is the case, then our 1/3 is going to be the coefficient term. So now that we've covered what a coefficient is, we are going to be looking into factoring out a coefficient of these variable terms. So we practiced factoring out the greatest common factor. In order to do this, we had to find the number that we were factoring out. When we're doing a question like this, where it tells us what we're factoring out, we have to do a few different things, but it's a little bit easier. First off, we have to ask ourselves, where is our variable? We're going to be looking at, let's look at this one. So I'm finding my variable term. I've got 5x. So that's my variable term, and my coefficient of x is 5. So I know my 5 is going to be on the outside of my parentheses. That's what it looks like when it's factored out. I know that it's going to be multiplied by two different terms because here I have term 1 and term 2. So I know I'm going to need two terms. When we are factoring something out, we're essentially telling the person who's going to look at this later that we're going to need to multiply our 5 back into this. So in order to undo that multiplication and figure out what we need to put on the inside of the parentheses, we need to undo multiplication by using division. So we've got 5x, and we'll be dividing it by our coefficient term. So it'll be 5x divided by 5, which is going to give us x. And then for our second term, we've got to make sure we're paying attention to our positive and negative signs because we've got negative 50 divided by 5, which is going to give us negative 10. So we end up with x minus 10. Again, if we have a fraction, this is telling us what will be on the outside of our parentheses. But don't be scared when you see a fraction. It's exactly the same process.